Good morning. Welcome again to Morning Devotions. I'm standing here before the ancient ruins of Capernaum. The large church you see here is actually built over the top of the Apostle Peter's home, where Jesus healed Peter's mother-in-law. The ruins that you see out here were homes where people lived. Right back in the back with the tall white building, that is an ancient synagogue that was built and actually rebuilt. That would not have been the synagogue Jesus preached in, but actually built on top of the synagogue that Jesus would have preached in after one of its destructions. We know that because this black rock is the rock that is indigenous to this area, and the white stone would have been brought down from Jerusalem and up into the hills. So this shows the wealth of this area to be able to build such a beautiful synagogue. But in the synagogue that was built underneath that current synagogue, a very strange thing happened one day. Jesus was preaching there in the synagogue in Mark chapter 3, and some people were looking for a reason to accuse him, watching to see if he would heal. And he did heal. The Bible says that he looked around at them in anger and deeply distressed at their stubborn hearts in chapter 3, verse 5. And he looked at the man and said, "Stretch out your hand and be healed." The Bible says in verse 6, "Then the Pharisees went out and began to plot with the Herodians how they might kill Jesus." The first plot to assassinate Christ happened right here in the synagogue at Capernaum. Beginning in verse 7 for our devotions today, Jesus withdrew with his disciples to the lake, and a large crowd from Galilee followed him. When they heard all that he was doing, many people came to him from Judea, Jerusalem, Idumea, and the regions across the Jordan and around Tyre and Sidon. Now it's fascinating to me that right here in the city of Capernaum, which was considered his hometown, a city that saw so many miracles, a city that had so much teaching of Jesus, a city that had so many of their own called into the ministry, it was here that the first plot to kill Jesus took place. And so he withdrew from the city of Capernaum. Later, he cursed this city along with Chorazin and Bethsaida, and they were devastated. And only in the last 100 or so years had these cities even been found and begin to be excavated. But these cities will never be lived in again. Jesus cursed these cities because they refused to believe in spite of all the miracles. But it's just fascinating to me. He withdrew, came back down to the beautiful shores of the Sea of Galilee, and even though leaders wanted to kill him, the people came to him. They came to be healed. They came to learn. So instead of preaching in the synagogue, he preached in God's synagogue, here at the shores of the Sea of Galilee. I challenge you today. Sometimes we get religious ideas in our head that cause us to look for reasons to accuse and find fault, rather than look at what God is wanting to do in people's lives. I challenge you today. Let's try to help people. Let's not be so worried about being right that we're wrong. Let's not be so worried about being right that we become destructive.